Ag PhD full episodes and more are now available on Acres TV, the newest ag platform connecting you to fields of information. Look for us on watchacrestv.com. Oftentimes on our show, we'll talk about a corn crop and say, get this done by V2, get this done by V6 or V10. Well, what are all those stages? And then when we get to reproductive stages, we got different names. So we thought at the start of the growing season here, let's talk about corn growth stages.
All right, to begin with, when we plant corn seed or when you plant corn seed, it's not going to pop out of the ground immediately. What's happening under the soil is you've got to get a certain number of growing degree units. You have to have a certain amount of heat. We figure usually it's somewhere around 100 growing degree units. We have to have a certain amount of heat and then it can get out of the ground. Well, the first thing that's going to come out of that seed is what we would call the radical root. Then there's the seminal roots that are going to come from there. Those are both right out of the seed. And then that plant is going to grow. We're going to end up with the plant pushing to the soil surface, and the coleoptile sheath will be right there at the soil surface, and then once that sees light, it sends the rest of the plant.
Well, what's kind of neat too is that corn plant will be white below the ground level, and it will be green, hopefully, maybe yellow, above the ground level. So you can look right where that coleoptile sheath is, because that stops right at the soil surface, and just measure down to where your seed's at. On a grass plant like corn, the seed stays put. So you can measure that difference, and you can see exactly what your seeding depth is.
Okay, in terms of root system, I want to talk about that real quick. The main root system of the corn plant is what's called the nodal roots, and you will find 5 rings of nodal roots below the soil surface. They are going to tie to the 5 collars, the first 5 collars that are established above ground that we'll talk about in just a minute. But those 5 rings of nodal roots are going to come out above the seed. So I know it seems a little bit weird, but those roots are going to be very close to the soil surface. They're going to start fairly close to the soil surface, then they're going to work their way down at roughly a 45-degree angle.
All right, so as that corn plant emerges out of the ground, you're going to see a leaf, and then you're going to see another leaf on the opposite side of the plant. As each leaf becomes fully developed, it will make a collar right around the stem. That collar will turn just a little bit different color, a white or a yellow kind of.
Looks kind of like a shirt collar.
Yeah, so you'll see a fully developed collar, then you know you have a fully developed leaf. So you may see 3 leaves on your plant, but you may only have 1 collar. We would call that vegetative stage 1. When that second leaf gets a fully developed collar, that would be vegetative stage 2, and so on, all the way up the plant. Now here's the tricky part. Once you get to V10 and V12 and V14, are there still going to be 14 leaves out there with collars? No, some of them will slough off. And you think, oh no, how am I ever going to identify that? Well, just look down at the bottom of your plant and see where those leaves are attached. Like Brian was talking about, as we're developing nodal root systems and we're developing leaves all at the same time, once we get to about V6, many times we'll see the first ring of above ground roots come out, the brace roots. When we get to V7, we might see even a second ring of brace roots come out. Brace roots come out as a result of stress, and that helps us identify, oh, if they're coming out right through this leaf, that's V6. If they're coming out through this leaf, that's V7.
All right, so there's a lot we could talk about when it comes to corn staging. I guess I'll leave you with 2 last things. V2 is critical because that is when ear shoots are initiated. So even though we think about reproduction in corn starting at tassel, it actually starts at V2. Ears are starting to be developed in that plant when that plant is very small. At V5, that's the last point where the growing point is still below ground. So if you get a frost, even at V5, your growing point is still protected to some degree because it's sitting below ground yet. Eventually that growing point will come up and it'll be the tassel, but early on, it is below ground all the way until about V6.
So that last vegetative stage is tasseling. That's called VT, vegetative stage tasseling. After that, we're into the reproductive stages.
Well, that's it for our little talk on corn staging today. Later in the show, we're going to be talking about our weed of the week. Can you identify this week's weed?